I'll get the video. We're live now.
We
You can.
start at 1:07. We'd like to watch the speech of Speaker Gingrich. And then go to 3:01, and it's Secretary Pompeo. And then I'd like to have Congressman Doolittle comment.
I didn't get the video, Dr. Jenkins. Can you resend it?
Should have it any second. So I'll show the first one with Speaker Gingrich, and you show the second one, all right?
Okay.
This is Speaker Newt Gingrich.
Dr. Jenkins, you need to share your screen.
So we had a session to honor Prime Minister Abe, who was tragically assassinated. And all the heads of state joined in to honor him. And we had Prime Minister Harper.
Dr. Jenkins, no sound.
You might need to stop sharing and share your sound, and then reshare.
Hold on, please. It should be a little better.
Faster than the possibility of disaster. I believe in what you're doing so much that I invited my grandson, Robert Cushman, to come with me because I wanted him to see how people from country after country, from every part of the world, could come together to talk about a better future. Because I want, he's a rising junior in college. I want his generation to have a sense of hope that there can be a better future. And I think about what we just did in putting the flowers up in memory of Prime Minister Abe. The tragedy at 68 years of age of that life being cutting short. The courage he displayed year after year in standing firmly for a Japan that was integrated into the world, that was prepared to do its share, and that was deeply committed to future. I also have to say that I had the opportunity this afternoon to speak with young leaders from 25 different countries in Africa. Now, many years ago, before many of you were born, I actually did a dissertation on Africa. Many countries. It's important. Africa is the continent of the future. Africa is the continent of growth. And one of our commitments has to be that African economic development should primarily benefit Africans and not be exploited as a new economic colonialism. Finally, I have to take a moment to talk a little bit about right here. It's sobering, and there's a huge conflict. And Kim Jong-un, on the one hand, sending flowers and a positive message, and on the other hand, firing a missile yesterday. Now, those are not exactly the same message. And part of the job, I believe, that Reverend Moon and Mother Moon started with was to somehow reach into the heart of the North Korean dictatorship and convince it
I think it froze up to Jenkins. You want to bring that one?
Here he comes. He's back.
African economic development should primarily benefit Africans and not be exploited as a new economic colonialism. Finally, I have to take a moment to talk a little bit about right here. It's sobering, and there's a huge conflict. And Kim Jong-un, on the one hand, sending flowers and a positive message, and on the other hand, firing a missile yesterday. Now, those are not exactly the same message. And part of the job, I believe, that Reverend Moon and Mother Moon started with was to somehow reach into the heart of the North Korean dictatorship and convince it that its future lies on the path of peace, not the path of war, on the path of hope, not the path of disaster, and that we hang in the balance. And this federation and this meeting and your leadership can make an enormous difference in which way that balance goes. So, oops, sorry for being sloppy, and I apologize to the next speaker, who now has a wet dais. But let me say in a drier and not wetter state, I really hope that each of you will take home the memory of the people sitting around you. I can tell you the times I've been here. When I go home, the meetings haunt me because the people encourage me. I look out here at a sea of faces of every ethnic background, from every continent except Antarctica. And despite the best efforts that Dan Burton and others have made, we have recruited no penguins at all from Antarctica, so we remain only 6 continents. But each of you, think about it, look around at the people near you. These are the faces of hope. This is the organization of hope. It is a great honor to be part of it, and I hope you will find this an inspiring gathering for the next 2 days. Thank you, and God bless you.
Thank you, Speaker Gingrich. We really appreciate this incredible message. And then, EJ, if you would now play Secretary Pompeo's message for the Summit 2022 and Leadership Conference. And then I'd like to ask Congressman Doolittle for some commentary, as he's playing a key role in this effort with parliamentarians.
Well, thank you very much. It's truly an honor to be back with you. The last time I was here in February, those of you who were here, remember I scootered up on a little ramp here. It was very dangerous. You should know that my foot has healed in those last 4 months. The Lord is with us. Yes, God is good. God is very good, but the last 4 months, that is the only thing that is less fractured in the world. We've watched in the days that followed Vladimir Putin commits acts of aggression. We've watched the COVID virus continue to run rampant around the world. We saw an assassination of an amazing Asian leader and a dear friend of mine. We've watched the Chinese Communist Party threaten the democratic, peace-loving people of Taiwan in ways they have not done previously. No, these last 4 months have been difficult. And the people who have come here today, the people who join in the desire for peace, well, that makes our work just a little bit more important, a little bit harder, and we must renew our commitment to that. I, of course, want to thank Dr. Moon for creating this opportunity for us all to come together around the Universal Peace Federation. I want to thank the good people from the Washington Times who have delivered to the United States messages that they often don't find in other places, indeed delivered messages to the world that the world needs to hear. Dr. Rafini, or Prime Minister Rafini, it was great to see you. Thank you for bringing these great leaders from all across Africa to be with us here to pray and to work so diligently to deliver peace for every human being, wherever they find themselves. You know, it's great to be the former Secretary of State because you can speak more freely. You can speak about things that are on your heart and that you know matters. And I thought today I'd talk about three things. I want to talk about truth, I want to talk about hope, and I want to talk about what it means for this group to be a federation. The truth is, when we talk about peace, sometimes think that's weakness, right? You talk about peace and you think about people who shake hands and aren't willing to use power and to deliver good outcomes for the people that they are tasked to lead and to represent. The administration that I worked in, you heard President Trump, you heard Vice President Pence. We desperately wanted peace. We wanted peace everywhere, but we were prepared to do the hard work to make that more likely. It need not be the case that those who speak the truth and those who want peace are victims, are those who fall prey to those who speak about peace, but who truly have an objective that is deeply different. Let me give you 5 examples from my time as Secretary of State. I sat across from Chinese counterparts, Wang Zhishe and Wang Yi. They spoke about peace, but rattled sabers. They rattled sabers against the Mongolian people. They imprisoned 1 million Uyghurs in the western part of China. They killed Indians at the border in the Himalayas. They created risk with every one of their border neighbors. They moved against the Vietnamese who were simply trying to use energy that was in their own economic zone. No, they spoke about peace, but they delivered the risk of war, and they made freedom less likely. I met with the Taliban leaders in Afghanistan. I signed an agreement that became known as the Doha Agreement. It was a set of commitments to try and make that part of the world, a place that had been so fraught, where so many Americans and so many people from your nations had lost their lives over the last 2 decades. No, they spoke about peace, but during my time and subsequently, they did not deliver on that. The people of Afghanistan are less free. The women of Afghanistan have rights now today that are only a fraction of what they were just 18 short months ago. I'd say the same thing here on this peninsula. I traveled my first trip to Pyongyang. I left on Good Friday, 2018, to travel to Pyongyang on what was then a clandestine mission to meet with Chairman Kim. We were prepared, we had done all the hard work, but the most important thing that I did as I walked into the room that day was to pray. It was, after all, Good Friday, the darkest day in the Christian tradition. I left North Korea and returned home on Easter Sunday, which brings me to hope, which brings me to faith and to commitment. And the central thesis with which we were meeting with Chairman Kim, it was delivered to follow on what Dr. Moon and Reverend Young Moon had talked about for so long. Is there a way for this one people to join together and make life better for the people of the entire peninsula? I was mindful and am ever mindful that when you meet with Chairman Kim and you are seeking peace, there are 25 million people in North Korea that are rooting for you, even if the person who you are sitting across from may not be. I was always mindful, too, when I would meet with my counterparts from the Chinese Communist Party, that there were 1.2 billion Chinese people that were rooting for better lives, for more freedom, and for peace. And so there is hope. It remains. That hope is real, and it will ultimately deliver good outcomes. But it has to be combined with the hard work that goes alongside us and the preparedness to demonstrate resolve and use power to make sure that that peace can actually be delivered. You know, back to truth for a second. Sometimes it gets muddy in the diplomatic world, or as we move around the world, we sometimes forget that when there is conflict, the parties are seldom equally responsible for that conflict. We should be fearless in calling out the aggressors. Does anyone think for 1 minute that had Vladimir Putin not moved into Ukraine, that the Ukrainians would have threatened a single Russian in Moscow? Does anybody think for a single minute if Chinese warships today engaging in exercises all around the freedom-loving people of Taiwan, if those ships went back to port, does one think for a moment that Taiwan threatens a single Chinese person in Beijing? Does anybody think for a second, if the Taliban put down their weapons, that it wouldn't be a freer and safer place? No, we should never forget who the aggressors are. Today Today, there is lots of focus on trying to deliver peace in the Middle East. I worked on it diligently. We made it a better, more stable, more prosperous place because we simply, along with our friends and partners around the world, acknowledged the truth that the aggressor in the region was the Ayatollah. It wasn't the Arab Gulf states, it wasn't the Jewish people in Israel. It was the leadership in the nation of Iran that presented aggressive risk not only to Israel and to the Gulf states, but to each and every one of us. No, we know who the aggressors are, and we know who the lovers of peace are. And it is absolutely essential that while we engage, and we have dialogue, and we speak, and we hope and we pray, but we speak truth about those who are undermining the very efforts that you all came here to Seoul today to work and to move forward. We know the elements of this peace. Prime Minister Rufino, you talked about it. This is about prosperity. It's about property rights, about freedom. It's about economic development for all peoples of the world. And we all know that we want clean water and clean air for every citizen of the world. But we know, too, that delivering on the next generation of energy, clean energy that is sufficient and affordable for every person, especially those who are suffering today, because they can't turn the lights on or they can't turn the air conditioning on, things that we take for granted in so many places of the world. We know that we must make sure that we deliver on this basic constituent of peace, the basic prosperity, the energy that is needed to deliver for the poorest, food security, and deliver comfort and peace for those who suffer today. There is hope. That hope comes from speaking truth. And now I want to close by speaking about the idea of a federation. So we're here today as part of a gathering of the Universal Peace Federation. America is familiar with federations. We had one at the start. It was called the Articles of Confederation. It was insufficient for governing a nation, but it is wholly sufficient for assisting in delivering peace around the world. The very concept of a federation suggests that there is no center point. There is no command and control structure. Rather, what it requires is each of the constituent communities, each of the governments, each of the non-governmental organizations, each of the leaders, each of you in this room today, to remain resolved, to speak the truth, and to live in hope and with joy. This will not come, this peace, this universal peace, this will not come from the top down. This will come from the hard work and efforts of all of you in this room, by the various leaders that we have heard from today, making clear that we understand who the aggressors are and who the peace-loving people are, that we speak truth about this, that we are hopeful for our future, and we are dedicating it to deliver it. No one will order peace. Peace will be ordered by the love and the kindness and the joy and the hard work of those who come together as part of this leadership conference, and those who, when we depart, when we decamp from this place in a day or two, will go back to their communities, they will go back to their schools, they will go back to their families, and they will continue to work on this very problem, this very goal, this very objective that we all know is so central to humanity and to the dignity of every human being. Bless you for taking time to come here. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you. Let us all be truthful and hopeful, and let us, as part of this federation, deliver the very peace here in the Peninsula and all around the world that every human being so desires and so deserves. Thank you, and may God bless you all.
Thank you, Secretary Pompeo. It was a wonderful experience there at the conference. I'd like to introduce at this time Congressman John Doolittle, who served in 18 years on the U.S. Congress and a tremendous conservative leader, was the third in line in the leadership of the Republican Party. He got tremendous advancements for peace and freedom throughout his time. And then he continued also to serve our nation as a person with conservative values and a thought leader, and a person who really knows about the fundamentals of peace. He really made a big difference when he helped Senator Orrin Hatch come together with Congressman Dan Burton And he was there helping to organize and host the International Association for Peace and or International Association of Parliamentarians for Peace. We were there at the Kennedy Caucus Room of the Dirksen Building in November of 2016, November 30th, the last Wednesday of the month. And the next day was December 1st. That Wednesday evening, we had 250 members of parliaments from around the world and about 70 members of Congress there at the program. And I want to thank Congressman Doolittle. He went to Korea with us. He spoke at the IAPP session that opened so we could get to know the African leaders. So, John, welcome. And we'd just like to get your reflection on Secretary Pompeo and also Speaker Newt Gingrich and your overall experience with the conference. And we thank you for your leadership. He's the North American chairman of the International Association of Parliamentarians for Peace. Welcome, Congressman Doolittle.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Jenkins. You've certainly been a great force for good with your leadership position in the UPF. And I did enjoy very much the conference. I thought some of the real highlights were the ones you just showed with both Speaker Gingrich and former Secretary of State, former Speaker Gingrich, and former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. I was reflecting on what they said, and honestly, I've been involved now for seems like quite a few years, and I really do feel that the UPF reflects or represents the greatest peace effort going on in the world today. The amount of resources, time and effort and money devoted to planning these leadership conferences and summits and arranging the hotels, bringing everybody together. I think this one had 360 some participants, even though since this is kind of the first one after all the ordeal with COVID, which was pretty much a 2-year ordeal, I think you'd expected just a little over 100 people, and ended up being quite a bit more than that. And nevertheless, you managed to host it effectively, to have key world leaders like the two we just heard from, and others. The British former Canadian Prime Minister Stephen Harper is a frequent participant in these summits, and he had really very good things to say as well, although we didn't feature his remarks just now. I am struck, and I don't feel we talk about it enough in those conferences, but Reverend Moon had some amazing engagement with the likes of Mikhail Gorbachev and Kim Il-sung. And a great church leader spoke once and indicated that it's important in our communications that we be honest, but he also observed that honesty can be harsh if delivered in the wrong way. And so he did encourage us all to speak plainly, but not harshly. And that's a gift that has to be developed, I think. Some have it better than others, but I think Reverend Moon was a great example of that, because he basically told Mikhail Gorbachev, this is years ago now, but that he needed to abandon communism, that was not good for the people. He said it in a way that was obviously truthful, but at the same time that was not taken harshly. It was understood by Mr. Gorbachev. And I mean, we all know what the result of that was. Sadly, the Soviet Union remains in the grip of authoritarianism, but far better off than what it was under communism. And we hope for a better day there for the people of Russia. Also with Kim Il-sung, Reverend Moon was invited and went there and wasn't entirely sure what might happen, including possibly risked his own life and limb, but he went. And he delivered the message again there to Kim Il-sung and said that his particular ideology was bad and needed to be, he didn't say it that way. See, I was harsh. I said it was bad. But anyway, he told him that it was not good and that he should abandon it. So he spoke the truth. He did it in a way that was not offensive. And the two of them formed a friendship and welcomed each other as brothers. And again, this is what I picked up at the death of Reverend Moon, why communications were sent expressing regret for that. And then even on this 10th anniversary of his passing, as was mentioned by Newt Gingrich, the current leader, Kim Jong-un, sent flowers. So Reverend Moon's actions made a difference and left a door open, I believe. And Mother Moon's efforts to continue the legacy of Reverend Moon by hosting these conferences, by doing everything she can to promote peace. There are opportunities there. There is hope. It is not hopeless. And we must do what we can, such as by attending the conferences that are hosted and using our influence for the good. And I think the UPF and Mother Moon in particular has discovered a hidden secret, and that is that former leaders in parliaments or heads of state, they have the freedom to do things they couldn't do if they held the office. And you're uniting them in this grand effort of these, and the one we just had, the Summit 2022 and the Leadership Conference, that is making a difference. I think everybody in the organization can feel very good about what you have accomplished and are accomplishing and yet may accomplish. So yeah, I'm glad that Mr. Pompeo spoke about hope. Hope's important. If we didn't have hope, we wouldn't get out of bed each day. Hope leads to faith, and faith leads to action, and action leads to accomplishments. And in the realm of peace, we need more accomplishments. Now, I will observe that weakness does not achieve peace. The projection, if you want peace, you have to project strength. And that's the other side of the coin of peace. You can't just be begging for peace or praying and doing nothing. You have to take action, and that requires hope and faith. So those are my off-the-cuff observations that I would share with you.
Thank you. Thank you, Congressman Doolittle. You're a very inspired leader and a man of great faith with your wife, Julie, and your family. We can't thank you enough. Yes, I felt the same thing. I was amazed at Secretary Pompeo's grasp of the threat of communism, the reality of a godless government with power and military. And yet he's not antagonistic. He's not saying there's no hope, we've got to destroy them. We really have to balance them with strength. Peace through strength is a reality, but no one wants war. And the reality is you will go to war if we don't have any communication. And I think this attitude of even Reverend Moon and Mother Moon to engage the enemy with Jesus' teaching, love your enemy. That's why they could go to North Korea. And I think Secretary Pompeo, again, on the 10th anniversary of his passing, did a wonderful tribute to him. It was created by the foundation of the information came from the Washington Times that researched Reverend Moon's life. And now it's well documented that, like Congressman Doolittle said, he went to North Korea with Mother Moon. They were sitting there. There's a video of this. And the main point he made was that the Juche ideology of Kim Il-sung will not work. It denies the existence of God. There's no way you're going to unify the Korean Peninsula with that kind of ideology. So he flat out told the subordinates to Kim Il-sung, it won't work. And only unity will bring some kind of reconciliation, unity based on faith and religious freedom, those kinds of fundamental principles that make America a country of hope. When there's religious freedom, and that's what Secretary Pompeo really emphasized, when there's religious freedom, then all the freedoms that flow from that, freedom of speech, freedom of thought, freedom of assembly, all those kind of things are based on the fact that God is our creator, but also really embracing all people. So that's a very encouraging principle. And they weren't executed. There was a rumbling going on right then. This is all in Dr. Hak Chan Moon's memoir, Mother of Peace, very detailed. And it's quite moving because everyone in their party thought that the meeting with Kim Il-sung would be canceled. And instead, just the opposite occurred. It was not clear he was going to meet Reverend Moon and Dr. Hak Chan Moon. And he had actually sent assassins to South Korea. Secretary Pompeo brought that up, and CIA Director Woolsey, who was CIA Director under President Clinton, also brought that up in a speech that it was known there were assassins sent to destroy Dr. Moon and her husband. And that was also true in America. The FBI caught the assassin and he served time in prison. I don't know where he is now, and that was sent by Kim Il-sung. That kind of thing. And I know our great leaders like Secretary Pompeo and President Trump and all officials, even former presidents, there's always danger out there when people stand up for our American godly values. So they weren't executed or imprisoned. Instead, Kim Il-sung decided to meet them. And that is kind of the root, John, as you recognize, that's kind of the root of the spirit of this conference. We don't condone communism. We don't we don't try to placate any of those evils. We call them out, but we don't do it with an idea that we just want you destroyed. We want you, and it's like Secretary Pompeo was saying that there's 1.3 billion Chinese that are cheering for this change of freedom. And there's also 25 million in North Korea out of the 27 that are cheering for America to come and liberate them. And that's America's greatest role. So thank you, John, for those comments. And I really thank Secretary Pompeo and Speaker Gingrich 2 years ago and the World Summit 2020, which John played a key role at. There was a huge, very large conference similar to this, but even bigger. And so many heads of state came from enemy nations. We had the vice president of Iran and the former president of Israel in the same conference. And those kind of things have impact. There's Muslim leaders from nations that would be deemed to be challenging. And yet there were also Christian leaders from pro-democracy, God-fearing countries. That's why we can engage those that have differences and bring peace. It is really possible, but it won't be possible with a weak America. Only if America's strong, and also the faith leaders played a key role. I know Apostle Glenda Phillips-Lee is here, and we'd like you to give a comment to Glenda in a moment. But really thank everybody for being here. Faith leaders play an incredibly important role. The interesting thing about this conference was that the focus was different than the February conference of 2020, and the virtual conferences we had last year, Rallies of Hope. The focus time was on Africa, to bring the African leadership together, because there's a lot of African heads of state and also ministers, prime ministers, and ministers of government who are very, very concerned about what China is doing in Africa. And now it's coming out. And first, they welcome China in many countries because they offer money, they offer to build roads and schools and bridges. It sounds great. But actually, what China's been doing is creating a debt trap. They don't give the money to the nations. What they do is they build all these things that look like it's a big help, but then they also have them sign contracts where they're supposed to pay the money back over long term, or share their resources with China. Precious metals and all kinds of things have been done. And now they're starting to feel the reality that this was not done for the benefit of Africa. It's done for the domination of China over all kinds of ports in Africa. Now they're looking to build ports on the western coast of Africa that threatens the security of the Atlantic. And now the challenges to Taiwan are very, very serious. And that's why I think there's also a feeling of hope, though, because the new president in South Korea and the Republic of Korea, as President Yoon Suk Yeol, is very, very strong that America's Korea alliance, ROK alliance, has to be very strong. And he's doing something that's really different from the past administration. He wants to reach out to Japan and put the past and not just discount the past of conflict between Japan and Korea and difficulties, but not let that take center stage. The alliance of America, Japan, and the ROK is far more important than the intra-national conflicts that occurred in the past, because we're talking about either the world going towards freedom and democracy and God-fearing nations, or we're talking about a world that will be controlled by a godless ideology and godless thinking. And China is very clear about what they want. They don't want simply a equal share. They want to really control all the South China Sea. That's why America's, challenging them with that. So I want to thank you for this. Thank you, John. And let's take a couple questions. Glenda Phillips-Lee, would you like to share something?
God bless you, Dr. Jenkins. I'm sorry, my camera is not on. Can you hear me well?
Yes, go ahead.
I'm reminded of James 4:1, and I thank God for all of you speakers, all of you world leaders that stood up, and you're standing up for peace, because you are our hope. You are the hope for our children and generations to come. But in James 4:1, the question is at what causes fights and quarrels among you? Don't they come from your desires that battle within you? Amen. And once we know what our fallen natures are, and we take hold of what they are and take responsibility over our action, I believe that we're going to make a world of difference. And I do too. Thank God for each of you, the unification members and leaders, especially you guys who have been here the last 50 years, and you have spearheaded this course. You have stuck to your guns, amen. And you have allowed and waited and allowed us also to come forth as spiritual leaders to now begin to take the baton and carry it to the next level. I also thank God for Africa being embraced at the level that it's being embraced. I've spoken to some of the leaders, and they are so happy, not only for the opportunity, but to know that someone really cares and that's not coming in to take from Africa, but to strengthen Africa, that Africa can stand up and, as Mother says, shine like a diamond. So continue to stay with God, stay in prayer, continue to do what you do. Amen. We believe that there is hope. The Bible said hope deferred maketh the heart sick, but when the desire comes, it is a tree of life, and we're embracing Godism. We're seeing things from God's point of view. So I bless you, and I thank God again for each of you.
Thank you so much, Apostle Glenda Phillips-Lee. Thank you. Thank you for your contribution to this conference in Korea. We really appreciate all of the leaders of faith. American Clergy Leadership Conference was there, the World Clergy Leadership Conference, and prominent leaders from Africa. They brought about 120 religious leaders to come from all over the continent. So, Congressman Doolittle, any follow-up comments to what's been said or what you're thinking?
Well, God is in charge. We're his children. And we're a quarrelsome bunch, and lots of bad things have happened over world history, obviously, but the time is coming when the people will be separated, those for Christ and those against him. All of us here will be together, arms linked, working for
Great.
Christ.
Great,
And
John. Thank you.
That's in the future, and maybe it's sooner in the future than we realize.
It looks like our time's almost up here, but I'd like to take maybe two more quick questions for Congressman Doolittle, or comment on the conference, or the Secretary's speech, or Speaker Gingrich. Who else would like to give a comment or a question? Okay, then. Thank you, everybody. John, one thing that's very unique, we met the parliamentarians from Africa. We only had one evening to just greet them, so it was more of a introductory meeting, but there were 6 current speakers of the parliaments of 6 different African nations there. And then they had 25 ministers of education from the northern tier of Africa, the SENSED group of nations, called it's an acronym for a French name, but the English translation is the Community of the Saharan States. And that runs from Senegal across the top of Africa over to Ethiopia, Egypt, and Libya, and 25 nations are there. And it's quite a powerful aspect. And one thing that we learned from this conference is that UPF had made an MOU with the Africa Union and also with the SENSAD. That MOU with SENSAD was signed by the Secretary General of SENSAD, the former Prime Minister of Niger, Brigitte Rafini, who also welcomed Dr. Moon in Niger. It's a 99% Muslim country. They welcomed her there more than once and really felt hope for peace between Muslims and Christians with the UPF support. So that's why 120 religious leaders were brought. About 30 of them were Muslim leaders, like Sheikh Mansour from Senegal, which is primarily a Muslim nation. And what were your thoughts about that? There were a MOU made with the African Union and SENSAD, and the idea of pulling them together, like you're doing with the parliamentarians, pulling them together with their counterparts in Asia, because Prime Minister Hun Sen of Cambodia is now the president of ASEAN for this year. His term will end at the end of this year, but they also made an MOU with the Asian ASEAN nations. And the whole idea is that these nations cooperate together to call on North Korea, many of whom have diplomatic relations with North Korea. And they've had delegations come from UPF delegations gone to North Korea to engage Kim Jong-un, the grandson. And it's actually opened up some doors of communication. So now Kim Jong-un has invited Dr. Moon and representatives of UPF to come north. And there hasn't been a date set yet, but that's been a standing invitation for 2 years. John, any comments on that kind of cooperative efforts like you're doing with the parliamentarians? You and Dan Burton, Congressman Burton, have had meetings with parliamentarians from the 6 continents, and they're all in one accord with us seeking peace for Northeast Asia. Congressman Doolittle?
Well, these are further extraordinary accomplishments brought about by Mother Moon and the UPF, which she and Reverend Moon founded. I mean, that's why this is so powerful, because as far as I know, there's really nothing else quite like this in the world today, where you're, and the Muslims are people of goodwill. They regard Jesus Christ as a prophet, not perhaps the prophet Muhammad, but as we gain more knowledge and understanding, that's going to knit us closer and closer together, so that in this great battle between good and evil that is due to occur, the forces of good will be united and we will triumph according to the scriptures. And I believe that heart and soul.
Thank you, Congressman Doolittle. We're very grateful for your leadership. Everyone, if you have congressmen that would like to be introduced to this, Congressman Doolittle and Congressman Burton Dan is the global co-chair and John is the chairman of North America. And we're reaching out to parliamentarians, congressmen from the United States. It's working very well and we can meet with them. We had a wonderful Washington Times 40th anniversary. That's one thing we didn't mention, John. The Washington Times is also a support of this effort. They also, contribute. There are about 6 articles came out of the conference in Korea, interviews with Secretary Pompeo. We also had Admiral Harry Harris, the former Pacific Command commander in charge of the Pacific Command. Before that, he was with the Pacific Fleet commander, and then he was ambassador to the Republic of Korea till last year. Outstanding leadership. So we really are grateful for all you're doing to pull the parliamentarians together. Is there any final comment somebody wants to make here?
Alan Jessen does not, he apologizes, he doesn't have a mic, but he said, how did the fact finding turn out? What was the highlight? I don't know if you want to take time for
Yeah,
that.
I can just mention very quickly the fact finding tour, which Congressman Doolittle helped to formulate. He couldn't be there for this fact finder. He came right before the conference started, but he did join a couple dinners with the delegates. But we had Admiral Harry Harris, we had General Sharp, who was the commander of the UNC CFC USFK, which is basically the United Nations and Combined Forces Command of United Nations, US, and ROK. He was the main commander, 4-star general. He was on the delegation. The Admiral Harris was on the delegation. Then also one congresswoman from Texas, an outstanding leader. And then also we had Dr. Manzaroff from Georgetown University. And we had a very special person this time. He was the one that went to North Korea with Secretary Pompeo on 2 occasions to meet Kim Jong-un. His name is Mr. Andrew Kim, outstanding American leader who also has a Korean heritage. And he was also CIA station chief in Korea up until a few years ago. He was the CIA mission center director under President Trump. So that meant when we went to each ministry, we went to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the Ministry of Defense. We went to also the U.S. ambassador from Korea welcomed us, the new ambassador, Ambassador Goldberg. He was an outstanding leader. And, Ambassador Harris actually invited him. General Sharp invited us to meet the Supreme Commander of the UNC now, General Camara. It was just amazing meetings, but very hopeful and also very wary because China's on the move. North Korea is still shooting off missiles. They shot one off last week. And yet the alliance of Japan, America, and Korea are now being emphasized again, which will balance out China. But we have to balance out that with communication and diplomacy, not with war. But if we're not strong, if they don't have the strong perception that we're ready, our military is totally ready to do anything and everything it needs to do to keep peace in Northeast Asia. If they think we're weak, war will come. And that's why the tension came from the different ministries of they're very wary of the aggressive nature of China right now in the Taiwan Strait and blockading Taiwan and punishing America and Taiwan or trying to for Speaker Pelosi's visit. But America's standing up to that. And so is the South Korean president, President Yoon, but not doing it in such a way that we're closing the door of dialogue. So that's what we found out in the fact finders. But the thing we learned most, Nadia, was the fact that when you have people that are so accomplished with this kind of background, like Secretary Pompeo or Congressman Doolittle or General Sharp, it is really, really, it really advances the friendship and the dialogue a lot. And then the Washington Times is part of the fact finder. And President Chris Dolan, the president of the Washington Times, Chairman Tom McDivitt, and I'm with the Times Holdings. They put together some great interviews and great articles, which gives people fresh and new insight. So one of the insights we got from the ministry is we've got to engage North Korea. You got to get North Korea back to the table. They're happy to not be in dialogue right now because they're free to develop their nuclear arsenal to the maximum, and they're unhindered. And we're not any more confident that China is hindering them from developing it further. That is a change. There was a time under President Trump where sanctions were supported by China and Russia at the UN. Now those sanctions, further sanctions, are not supported by China and Russia. So it's going back the other way, and that's why the Biden administration has to be very strong right now. But they're actually not really actively pursuing strongly enough the engagement that's necessary to stop the military or the development of nuclear weapons on the Korean Peninsula with North Korea. So that's what we learned. But thank you for that question. Congressman Doolittle, thank you for this time today. And we thank all of our audience. And this will be recorded and it will be shared further. And as it keeps going out on the social media, we get up to, a couple thousand views eventually. So this is going out to really great thinkers and leaders of the United States, people who care about God, freedom, and our values of our nation. And we really pray for America to be strong and to come together, overcome the divide of the people, and really come together beyond just local and social issues. Go beyond to the world issue of freedom for the world, and the safety and the sanctity of family, and also of peace in the world. So thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Congressman Doolittle. I'll be calling you soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, EJ.